Hürrem Sultan was the favorite and later the chief consort and legal wife of Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent and the mother of Şehzade Mehmed, Mihrimah Sultan, Şehzade Abdullah, Sultan Selim II, Şehzade Bayezid, and Şehzade Cihangir. She was one of the most powerful and influential women in Ottoman history and a prominent and controversial figure during the era known as the Sultanate of Women. She was Haseki Sultan when her husband, Suleiman I, reigned as the Ottoman Sultan. She achieved power and influenced the politics of the Ottoman Empire through her husband and played an active role in state affairs of the empire. Names. According to some historians, Roxelana was born as Alexandra Ruslana Lisovska or Anastasia Lisovska, while her childhood nickname was Nastia. Among the Ottomans, she was known mainly as Haseki Hürrem Sultan or Hürrem Haseki Sultan, also known as Roxelana, Roxelana, Roxelane, Rosso, Erzaka, in Turkish as Hürrem, and in Arabic as Karima. Roxelana might be not a proper name but a nickname, referring to her Russian heritage. Roxolani, or Roxelani, was one of the names of Ukrainians, up to the 15th century, after the ancient Roxolani. Thus her nickname would literally mean, the Ruthenian one. Early life. Modern sources do not contain information on Hürrem's childhood, limiting themselves to information about her Polish, Russian and Ukrainian ethnic origin, and mentioning the Kingdom of Poland as her birthplace. In the middle of the 16th century, the ambassador of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania in the Crimean Khanate Miklin Litvin in the composition of 1548 to 1551 about customs of Tartars, Lithuanians and Moscow. The description of trade specifies that the most beloved wife of the present Turkish emperor, mother of his primogenital who will govern after him, was kidnapped from our land. According to late 16th century and early 17th century sources, such as the Polish poet Samuel Twardowski, who researched the subject in Turkey, Hürrem was seemingly born to a father who was a Ukrainian Orthodox priest. She was born in the town of Rohatyn, 68 kilometers southeast of Lwow, a major city of the Ruthenian voivodeship in the Crown of the Kingdom of Poland. In the 1520s, Crimean Tatars captured her during one of the frequent raids into this region, took her as a slave and selected her for Suleiman's harem. Relationship with Suleiman. Roxelana probably entered the harem around 15 years of age, sometime between 1517 and 1520, but certainly before Suleiman became sultan in 1520. She quickly came to the attention of her master and attracted the jealousy of rivals. She soon became Suleiman's most prominent consort beside Gulfem and Mahidevran. Her joyful spirit and playful temperament earned her a new name, Hürrem, from Persian Khorram, the cheerful one. In the Istanbul harem, Hürrem became a rival to Mahidevran and her influence over the Sultan soon became legendary. Hürrem was allowed to give birth to more than one son, which was a stark violation of the old imperial harem principle. One concubine mother, one son, which was designed to prevent both the mother's influence over the Sultan and the feuds of the blood brothers for the throne. She was to bear the majority of Suleiman's children. Hürrem gave birth to her first son Mehmed in 1521 and then to 4 more sons, destroying Mahidevran's status as the mother of the Sultan's only son. Suleiman's mother Aisha Hafsa Sultan partially suppressed the rivalry between the two women. As a result of the bitter rivalry, a fight between the two women broke out, with Mahidevran beating Hürrem, which angered Suleiman. In 1533 or 1534, Suleiman married Hürrem in a magnificent formal ceremony, making him the first Ottoman Sultan to wed since Orhan Gazi. and violating a 200-year-old custom of the Ottoman imperial house according to which sultans were not to marry their concubines. Never before was a former slave elevated to the status of the sultan's lawful spouse. Much to the astonishment of observers in the palace and in the city, Hürrem also received the title Haseki Sultan and became the first consort to hold this title. This title, used for a century, reflected the great power of imperial consorts in the Ottoman court, elevating the status higher than Ottoman princesses, and making them the equals of empresses consort in Europe. In this case, Suleiman not only broke the old custom, but created a new tradition for the future Ottoman sultans to marry with a formal ceremony and make the consorts have significant influence on the court, especially in matter of succession. Hürrem's salary was 2,000 aspers a day, making her one of the highest-paid Haseki. Later, Hürrem became the first woman to remain in the Sultan's court for the duration of her life. In the Ottoman imperial family tradition, a sultan's consort was to remain in the harem only until her son came of age, after which he would be sent away from the capital to govern a faraway province, and his mother would follow him. This tradition was called Sancak Beyliği. The consorts were never to return to Istanbul unless their sons succeeded to the throne. In defiance of this age-old custom, Hürrem stayed behind in the harem with her hunchback son Cihangir, even after her three other sons went to govern the empire's remote provinces. Moreover, she moved out of the harem located in the old palace to Suleiman's quarters located in the new palace after a fire destroyed the old palace. Under his pen name Mihrimah Sultan, Suleiman composed this poem for Hürrem Sultan: Throne of my lonely niche, my wealth, my love, my moonlight, my most sincere friend, my confidant, my very existence, my Sultan, my one and only love, the most beautiful among the beautiful, my springtime, my merry-faced love, my daytime, my sweetheart, laughing leaf, my plants, my sweet, my rose, the one only who does not distress me in this world, my Istanbul, my Karaman, the earth of my Anatolia, my Badakhshan, my Baghdad and Khorasan, my woman of the beautiful hair, my love of the slanted brow, my love of eyes full of mischief. I'll sing your praises always on, lover of the tormented heart, Mihrimah of the eyes full of tears, I'm happy. State affairs. Hürrem not only became Suleiman's partner in household, but also in state affairs. Thanks to her intelligence, she acted as Suleiman's chief advisor on matters of the state, and seems to have had an influence upon foreign policy and international politics. This position made her one of the most powerful and influential women in Ottoman history and in the world at that time, even when compared with women who held the title Valid Sultan. For this reason, she became a controversial figure in Ottoman history, who was subject to allegations of plotting against and manipulating her political rivals. Controversial figure. Hürrem's influence in state affairs not only made her one of the most influential women, but also a controversial figure in Ottoman history, especially her rivalry with Mahidevran and her son Mustafa Pagali Ibrahim Pasha and Kara Ahmed Pasha. Hürrem and Mahidevran had borne Suleiman 6 Şehzades, 4 of whom survived past the 1550s, Mustafa, Selim, Bayezid, and Cihangir. Of these, Mustafa was the eldest and preceded Hürrem's children in the order of succession. Traditionally, when a new sultan rose to power, he would arrange the deaths of all of his brothers to ensure the stability of the empire. Mustafa was recognized by many of the people as the most talented of all the brothers and was supported by Ibrahim, who became Suleiman's Grand Vizier in 1523. Hürrem was usually held at least partly responsible for the intrigues in nominating a successor. Although she was Suleiman's wife, she exercised no official public role. This did not, however, prevent Hürrem from wielding powerful political influence, since the empire lacked, until the reign of Ahmed I, any formal means of nominating a successor. Successions usually involved the death of competing princes in order to avert civil unrest and rebellions. In attempting to avoid the execution of her sons, Hürrem used her influence to eliminate those who supported Mustafa's accession to the throne. A skilled commander of Suleiman's army, Ibrahim eventually fell from grace after an imprudence committed during a campaign against the Persian Safavid Empire during the Ottoman Safavid War, when he awarded himself a title including the word Sultan. Another conflict occurred when Ibrahim and his former mentor, Iskandar Çelebi, repeatedly clashed over military leadership and positions during the Safavid War. These incidents launched a series of events which culminated in his execution in 1536 by Suleiman's order. It is believed that Hürrem's influence contributed in Suleiman's decision. After 3 other Grand Viziers in 8 years, Hürrem's son-in-law, Damit Rustam Pasha, husband of Mihrimah, was selected by Suleiman to become the head vizier. Many years later, towards the end of Suleiman's long reign, the rivalry between his sons became evident. It is believed both Hürrem and the Grand Vizier Rustam helped turn Suleiman against Mustafa, and Mustafa was accused of causing unrest. During the campaign against Safavid Persia in 1553, because of a fear of rebellion, Suleiman ordered the execution of Mustafa. According to a source, he was executed that very year on charges of planning to dethrone his father. His guilt for the treason of which he was accused remains neither proven nor disproven. After the death of Mustafa, Mahidevran lost her status in the palace and moved to Bursa. She did not spend her last years in poverty as her stepson, Selim II, the new sultan after 1566, put her on a lavish salary. Her rehabilitation have been possible after the death of Hürrem in 1558. Cihangir, Hürrem's youngest child, allegedly died of grief a few months after the news of his half-brother's murder. Suleiman dismissed Rustam and appointed Kara Ahmed as his Grand Vizier in October 1553. But almost 2 years later, Kara Ahmed was strangled by Suleiman's order in September 1555. It is said that the reason for the execution was due to political maneuverings of Hürrem, who wanted Rustam to become the Grand Vizier again. After death of Kara Ahmed, Rustam Pasha became the Grand Vizier once more. Although the stories about Hürrem's role in executions of Ibrahim, Mustafa, and Kara Ahmed are very popular, actually all of them are not based on first-hand sources. All other depictions of Hürrem, starting with comments by 16th and 17th century Ottoman historians as well as by European diplomats, observers, and travelers, are highly derivative and speculative in nature, because none of these people were permitted into the inner circle of imperial harem, both for Ottomans and foreign visitors, which was surrounded by multiple walls. They largely relied on the testimony of the servants or courtiers or on the popular gossip circulating around Istanbul. Even the reports of the Venetian ambassadors at Suleiman's court, the most extensive and objective first-hand Western source on Hürrem to date, were often filled with the author's own interpretations of the harem rumors. Most other 16th-century Western sources on Hürrem, which are considered highly authoritative today, such as Tercia Epistolae Vogue de Busbecq, the emissary of the Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand I at the port between 1554 and 1562, the account of the murder of Şehzade Mustafa by Nicholas de Moffin, the historical chronicles on Turkey by Paolo Giovio, and the travel narrative by Luigi Bassano, were derived from hearsay. Foreign policy. Hürrem acted as Suleiman's advisor on matters of state, and seems to have had an influence upon foreign policy and on international politics. Two of her letters to King Sigismund as II Augustus of Poland have survived, and during her lifetime the Ottoman Empire generally had peaceful relations with the Polish state within a Polish-Ottoman alliance. In her first short letter to Sigismund II, Hürrem expresses her highest joy and congratulations to the new king on the occasion of his ascension to the Polish throne after the death of his father Sigismund I in 1548. She also pleads with the king to trust her envoy Hasan Aga, who took another message from her by word of mouth. In her second letter to Sigismund August, written in response to his letter, Hürrem expresses in superlative terms her joy at hearing that the king is in good health, and that she sends assurances of his sincere friendliness and attachment towards Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. She also quotes the Sultan as saying, "With the old king we were like brothers, and if it pleases the all-merciful God, with this king we will be as father and son." Quote. With this letter, Hürrem sent Sigismund II the gift of 2 pairs of linen shirts and pants, some belts, 6 handkerchiefs, and a hand towel, with a promise to send a special linen robe in the future. There are reasons to believe that these 2 letters were more than just diplomatic gestures, and that Suleiman's references to brotherly or fatherly feelings were not a mere tribute to political expediency. The letters also suggest Hürrem's strong desire to establish personal contact with the king. Perhaps, writes one Ukrainian author, they express her concern about her land, which was under Polish kings, and her desire to help it out in any possible way. Quote. In his 1551 letter to Sigismund II concerning the embassy of Pyotr Opalinsky, Suleiman wrote that the ambassador had seen your sister and my wife. Quote. Whether this phrase refers to a warm friendship between the Polish king and Ottoman Haseki, or whether it suggests a closer relation, the degree of their intimacy definitely points to a special link between the two states at the time. Charities. Aside from her political concerns, Hürrem engaged in several major works of public buildings, from Mecca to Jerusalem, perhaps modeling her charitable foundations in part after the Caliph Harun al-Rashid's consort Zubaydah. Among her first foundations were a mosque, 2 Quranic schools, a fountain, and a women's hospital near the women's slave market in Constantinople. It was the first complex constructed in Istanbul by Mihrimah in his new position as the chief imperial architect. The fact that it was the 3rd largest building in the capital, after the complexes of Mehmed II and Suleiman, testifies to Hürrem's great status. She also built mosque complexes in Adrianople and Ankara. She commissioned a bath, the Haseki Hürrem Sultan Hamami, to serve the community of worshippers in the nearby Hagia Sophia. In Jerusalem she established in 1552 the Haseki Sultan Imarat, a public soup kitchen to feed the poor and the needy. This soup kitchen was said to have fed at least 500 people twice a day. She also built Imarat Haseki Hürrem, public soup kitchen in Mecca. Some of her embroidery, or at least that done under her supervision, has also survived, examples being given in 1547 to Tahmasp I, the Shah of Iran, and in 1549 to King Sigismund II Augustus. Esther Handali acted as her secretary and intermediary on several occasions. Hürrem died on the 15th of April 1558 and was buried in a domed mausoleum decorated in exquisite Iznik tiles depicting the Garden of Paradise. Perhaps in homage to her smiling and joyful nature, her mausoleum is adjacent to Suleiman's, a separate and more somber domed structure at the courtyard of the Suleymaniye Mosque. Legacy. Hürrem Haseki Sultan, or Roxelana, is well known both in modern Turkey and in the West, and is the subject of many artistic works. In 1561, 3 years after Hürrem's death, the French author Gabriel Bounan wrote a tragedy titled Le Sultan about the role of Hürrem Sultan in Mustafa's death. This tragedy marks the first time the Ottomans were introduced on stage in France. She has inspired paintings, musical works, and opera by Denis Suchinsky, a ballet, plays, and several novels written mainly in Ukrainian, but also in English, French, and German. In early modern Spain, she appears or is alluded to in works by Quevedo and other writers, as well as in a number of plays by Lope de Vega. In a play entitled The Holy League, Titian appears on stage at the Venetian Senate, and stating that he has just come from visiting the Sultan, displays his painting of Sultana Rosa Roxelana. In 2007, Muslims in Mariupol, a port city in Ukraine, opened a mosque to honor Roxelana. In the 2003 TV miniseries, Hürrem Sultan, she was played by Turkish actress and singer Gülben Ergen. In the 2011-2014 TV series Mutesa Musil, Hürrem Sultan is portrayed by Turkish-German actress Meryem Üzerli from Season 1 to Season 3, and at the series' last season she is portrayed by Turkish actress Vahide Persin. Issue with Suleiman. She had 5 sons and 1 daughter. Mehmed, Hürrem's first son. Born in 1521 at Istanbul, Mehmed became ruler of Manisa from 1541. Mihrimah, Hürrem's only daughter, she was married to Rustam, later Ottoman Grand Vizier, on 26 November 1539. She functioned as Valid Sultan to her younger brother Selim II, Abdullah. Selim, he was governor of Manisa after Mehmed's death and later governor of Konya. He ascended to the throne on 7 September 1566 as Selim II. Bayezid, he was governor of Kütahya and later Amasya. Cihangir. Gallery.